Welcome to the Collective Genius Podcast, the show for real estate investors who are looking to scale.
Welcome back to the Collective Genius Podcast. I'm Leon Barnes, your host. This is the podcast for real estate investors that want to grow and scale their businesses. I have the pleasure of welcoming another great longtime CG member. Please welcome New Jersey's finest, Mr. Fuquan Bilal. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm ready.
I'm so glad to have you on the pod, my friend. You always come with the biggest smile. I don't know many people more positive than you, so I can't wait to share your story. But let's start there. Before we get into all the things that you do, how do you remain so positive all the time?
I wake up every morning and I say, today is the best day of my life. That's what I do. Actually, I was inspired. I believe it was TD Bank. Every time I would go to TD Bank, they would say, it's a great day. How may I help you? It's a great day. How may I help you? They would always start with that. And no matter what the person mood who was tired of standing online, aggravated, they would just brighten up, right? Because somebody's greeting them and giving that energy to them. So I was like, well, I want to emulate that. I want to transfer that energy to everyone. So how do I do that? First, when I wake up, big stretch in the air. Today is the best day of my life. And I stretch and I feel it, breathe in. And I go out and, when I start to run into people that's negative, I will ask them, what's the best thing that happened to you today so far? And you would just see the energy change in their body because now they have to think of something positive, right, to tell you that, right? So it's not easy, though. It's not easy. I had a friend of mine that said, you're always in a good mood. It can't be true. Like, it's fake. Yeah. And I was like, I guess it's whatever you tell yourself. So you have to pretend, I guess. If you have to stay in that positive mood.
Well, you're from a region of the country where not many people will walk by you on the street and say hi to you. In fact, if you do them, it might be a problem, right?
Yeah, this is true.
I'm a Midwesterner, and so living in Florida now. But when you meet eyes with somebody on the road, it's when you're walking, you say hi. That's a transfer of enthusiasm. That's a transfer of energy. And I love it. I just, not everybody adheres to that, but I'm glad that we start the pod off with that of starting with positivity and sharing that positivity. So let's talk about that region of the country that you're from. Why don't you share everyone what it is that you do, and then we'll get into your journey. But I want to let everyone know that you have a wide range of real estate investing that you do in New Jersey, and I want you to give a proper introduction here to start us off.
Yeah, so Fuquan Bilal, fund manager, CEO of NNG Capital Fund. It's been a 26-year journey for me. I'm from the Northeast, New Jersey, born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. Had a rough upbringing, single-parent household. Same story, mama welfare, all the stuff that gives you the grit and determination to survive. Most people that come from that hardship, they basically excel if they're determined because they don't want to continue to live that way. So that's their motivation of becoming successful, right? They remember the days when there was no electricity and no food and the oodles and noodles and all of that stuff, right? That give us that grit to be successful. But I started real estate in 99 and started off doing some flips. I worked corporate and basically I shadowed a family member of mine and saw that they had some success and decided to take a leap of faith. And, that was it from there. I did a transaction, made a great deal of money and sort of writing on the wall, put my 2-week notice in. And I never looked back and never thought twice. So I actually had that tattoo. Never look back, never think twice. And it's just been forward from there. And it hasn't been a really easy journey. A lot of valuable, expensive lessons learned over those 26 years. But I tell you, I wouldn't change any direction, that I went. I would want to go through the same path and learn those same lessons because it kind of makes you who you are as you go through the journey.
Hopefully, if you're learning, right, if you're just doing 26 years one time, right, you're not getting much from that. You're only getting 1 year of experience. But the lesson obviously is if you're continuing to learn from those hardships and grow and add to your experience, I think that's definitely a positive. I know where I was going with this. There was an avenue specifically with, where you said in '99 you mentored, you found, real estate, you were in corporate. What is it that, young Fuquan, when you were growing up, like you, very similar background, single family, single parent household. You mentioned oodles and noodles. In fact, that to me that was like the most expensive version of ramen noodles. So you actually had the good kind. You had the classy noodle, my friend. What is it while you're growing up? Because I had that drive because I didn't, I knew what I was growing up in. I didn't want to continue that. Nothing wrong with that, but I had that motivation. What did you want to do? It probably wasn't real estate back then.
Well, it was always sales, right? I spoke about this in one of my books, and I talked about my mom used to take us to a bazaar, like a flea market, on the weekends, and she used to actually go to Chinatown and buy the gloves, the scarves, the hats, things that she can buy in a dozen wise, and then we would pay $50 for a booth for the weekend, for a Saturday, 6-foot table. She would go put those items on the table, and she would give us 25% of the profits. So, she spent whatever, and she would split the profits with us 50-50 basically. And I remember I probably was maybe around 10 years old or 19 years old and started to get sales. And when people would say no, it became a game to tell them yes. Then I would actually go across the street from the flea market to sell to people before they cross the street, so I can make sure I got their money before they even step on the parking lot to see other items that were for sales from other vendors. Like I would cut them off and do my sales across the street. So I was very successful with that. I would sell my mom out every weekend. It became fun, exciting. We started to bring my younger brother. Then him and I started to be competitive. So I've always gravitated towards sales. And at that age, we did that for about 2-3 years on every Saturday and Sunday. And that was what got me motivated, I guess, in sales. And I always wanted to do that. So that's what set me off. And as I got older and came up through corporate, and the time that I was spending doing things that was benefiting the company, at one day I just said, what if I can put this time and energy into doing something for me? My first venture, I believe, was a little restaurant. I did a joint venture with my mom after saving money. That didn't go so well. Because my mom just wanted to serve. We grew up in a Muslim background, so she would, when it was Ramadan, she would be closed for the whole month. And I was like, Mom, you can't close a business for the whole month. We need to make money. Right. She just did it, just for the Muslims or whatever. It was a restaurant just for that. And I was like, this is a business. So going through that and learning through that, I was like, this is not something I want to do. And then through my life, I had other small businesses. But when I left corporate, I dived into real estate full time and began liking it because it really gave me a feeling of importance, Leon, because I was able to go back to the communities where I came from. There was a lot of blighted, dilapidated properties, burnouts, you name it. And having the ability, one, to employ people from the neighborhood that had criminal records, giving them jobs like demolition and stuff like that. The guys go, I can't get a job because I got a record. Okay, you could come work and clean out this house. You can demo. You don't have plumbing, electrical, or HVAC license or whatever. I don't even think we was doing HVACs back then, but you don't have those licenses, but you can clean out, you can do demo, you can pick up a hammer. So giving them employment and then also revitalizing those homes, it gave me the feeling of importance. That with being able to sell and then educating people on first-time homeownership in that community, it was just a really good feeling, starting off the journey in real estate.
That piece of it, I think, is super important I hear a lot of younger investors say, hey, I can see myself doing something else because I don't necessarily love real estate. I don't necessarily love, and I think they're specifically talking about the transactional piece of wholesaling, right? I think that's so important is to find that why, that next level of, I am doing this to better my community, because you have pride in where you live and you're giving back to the community. That's what I fell in love. I used to always say we're making this community better one house at a time, because most of the properties that we did were one family, single families. But that gave me that joy to wake up every morning knowing, hey, there may be some struggles in anything that we do, but we know that we're taking these houses that are overgrown. We're improving neighborhoods. We're improving values of homes in those neighborhoods, and there's just a real sense of being within that you're giving back to that community. But you didn't start there, obviously, Fuquan. You had to. You have this mission of making the community better, but you have to have a business to be able to do that. So take me back to when you left corporate. You said a mentor. Tell me, let's start right there on your real estate journey, because I don't want to skip steps here, because that's super important right there. You found someone that got you into this. How did that happen? How'd that go down?
Yeah, so it was actually two people. My older brother, he was a mortgage loan officer, and he, for the longest, was trying to get me into the real estate business through originating loans. He worked for a mortgage company for about, 5 years. And this is my older brother. He was saying, hey, you can make a lot of money doing this. And I was ignorant to it. I was like, I don't want to wait a month to get my paycheck. I get paid every 2 weeks. I got to wait a whole month. But the commissions are great, So he would tell me that, and he had these books around the house about, loans, origination. So I would read them, to get interest, because I would see how excited he was. And then another family member of mine had just jumped in and started doing real estate, and he was involved in it for about a year or so before me. He had a lot of success, and he closed transactions. And between the two of them, my older brother, and it was my cousin, actually, who was actually in real estate, I started to shadow my cousin and saw what he was doing. And he was closing deals, making $40,000, $60,000, $80,000. I'm like, wow, if you can, I'd rather go for that part of the real estate instead of the origination piece where they're only getting a point off the loan amount. And back then, loan amounts were like 120, 150, for like a 3-family house. I was like, it makes more sense to go on the investment side, but I don't have the capital. So what I did to get started was I said, okay, if I can educate people in the community how to qualify for a loan and what do they need to do, and then I can connect them with the loan officer piece, I did that part. Now I was helping the investors also, who really at that time couldn't find buyers. So it was like, you go to one of those seminars where you have 30, 40 people show up, you educate them, you get them pre-qualified, you connect them with a loan officer. And then also there's some investors there that have houses that are ready, and you connect them through that way. So that's really how I got my start, is just making connections and getting educated in the space. And then basically doing my first deal where it was like a group of us leveraging each other credit. I met an investor who gave me an opportunity. He's no longer with us, but he was doing real estate. So he's like 85, but he had a bunch of properties back then. He was buying properties from Aquin and a few other lenders. This was before the GFC. He had connections in with them, and he had the properties, but he didn't have the buyers. So what he did was, which was very smart, but I didn't figure out this whole tax thing until afterwards. He saw the hunger that I had, and he saw that I was building a network of buyers to buy these properties. And he came to me one day and he said, I want to try something with you. I'm going to take this property. You're probably going to need about $25,000, $20,000 to fix it up, but I'm going to deed it over to you, and I'm going to put a mortgage on it. And then when you sell it, you just pay the mortgage off. And before that, we did a few transactions where I brought him some buyers and he closed. And I was like, this seems easy. Okay, I'm going to put in $25,000 of my money, and he's going to become the lender by just deeding the property over to me and putting a lien on it. That's pretty cool. So we did a couple of transactions like that until the light bulb went off in my head. I go, wow. I started looking at the title when I closed on someone, I get title back. It was like, this guy paid $20,000 for the property. He put a lien on it for $80,000, $90,000, right? He made his money behind the scenes, and he became the lender. Now I got it from him. It's the $80,000 lien. I'm selling it for $160,000, $180,000. Now I'm responsible for the taxes on everything above that in the construction. So I kind of found out what he was doing at the end. But the benefit of that was, probably around about maybe our 15, 16 transaction, his closing package got sent to me by accident. So the lawyers, when they close the deal, they send out everything. So I open up everything up and I see the payoffs to the lenders. So I started to research who the lenders were, and there were hard money lenders in New York that was funding him for the acquisition of the purchase. He would go out and buy 10 properties in bulk. He would use these lenders from New York to do the financing. He would put up money. And I kind of just reached out to them and I packaged all the HUDs of all the transactions that I've done and said, look, these are the properties that I sold because my name was on the deed. I do have experience. And then they figured out I was the one actually dispoing all those properties. And immediately they gave me $1 million line of credit. And that was the best thing that happened to me. I mean, back then, interest rates were 16% for hard money. And they would give you 80% of money, 100% of the renovation for some of them. Some of them was like, 50% of renovation. But it was 16% interest. That's what it was back then. Nobody complained. You got the deal done. You fixed it, sold it. So that's pretty much how my journey began. And what accelerated that was because I was doing those home buying seminars, I started to tap into the New York market. And this back then was when brownstones were $500,000 in New York. And now New Yorkers were able to come over and buy three family properties and have 9 units for $500,000. So, they started to come over in droves. We used to do seminars and we built our buyers list. And then basically, finding properties, acquisitions was very easy. It was so many abandoned properties. People were literally giving people away. Like the people losing properties, you go to a church, the reverend would have properties to like get rid of. It was so many different acquisition resources we had. So marrying the two, the buyers and the property, was very simple.
What year was this as you're talking about them giving away properties, just for context?
Yeah, so it was people in the church losing their home to foreclosure and trying to avoid foreclosure on their credit. And then you have someone like me. This was before then.
Okay.
So this whole thing I'm talking about is pre-GFC.
Okay.
Yeah, pre-GFC. This is from 99 till about probably 07, somewhere around there. But earlier from like 99 to about maybe 03, 04 was really, I started to get a lot of traction and had a lot of success. I just want to back up for a minute, back to 2001. March 30th, 2001 was a change in my life because it was one of those moments like people go through divorce, they go through job loss or whatever it is. During this time, I actually, like I told you, I used to give work to people in the community to help do demo. And we used to actually go on Fridays to the construction sites to do payroll. Well, actually, no, we used to do it in-house. This Friday, we decided to go to the construction sites to do payroll because it was my cousin's birthday. So we went, we did payroll. I came back to the office. He took off. I was there by myself. And it was a botched robbery. Someone came in thinking that we had the money there and tried to rob me and shot me 5 times. And I say that was the best thing that happened to me because it really taught me something. Just because you're in the community doing good, people still don't respect that, right? There's still jealousy, there's still envy, there's still all that stuff going on. So you have to be always mindful of your surroundings, right? And it's the best thing that happened to me because I was immediately able to separate myself from that environment. I still can add value by doing repairs there, but it really made me hungrier than I was, right? I actually, for the next 6 months, went through healing. I was able to work from home, develop more resources. Remember, I had the buyers list. So back then, if you had the buyers, that's the goal. So I was able to keep that buyers list that I had and still do deals on my own and still help other investors dispo properties through the buyers list. And that's when I started to find more success, ironically, after, I was shot and left for dead. But that was a really important part of my life because not only did it teach me about my surroundings, it taught me the real value of life, right? We take for granted the smallest things, right? Being able to tie your shoe. I couldn't tie my shoe for a few months because I couldn't feel down because I had staples in my stomach, right? The small things you appreciate, right? When you think that you could have left without making a mark, without making an impact, it changed your whole mindset. And that's where most of the positivity that we talked about on this beginning of the call come from. Because why aren't you grateful? Because you could be going like this in a second. And a lot of people take that for granted.
Well, you are a walking miracle, my friend. 5 times and we're left there. Who ended up I've heard this story but I don't remember how you were found.
Actually, I jumped up. I was actually on the phone with my appraiser, and I saw somebody walk past, because our office it was a big office. I think we probably had, I don't know, 3,500, 4,000 square feet. We had all these little offices within the office, and I had my door open, and the front door was unlocked. I was the only one in the office, and the guy came in and walked past my office. I was on the phone with my appraiser. I remember he was about to go to Costa Rica, and we were talking about a deal. He was finishing the appraisal, and I saw somebody walk by. I'm like, who is this? Hold on a second. So I walked out, and I was like, excuse me, are you looking for somebody? And the guy turned around. He's like, I'm looking for you. Boom, boom, boom. Because I like came up on him. And then I had to play dead. And I took 2 in the back after he shot me stomach, arm, whatever. I took 2 in the back. And he left out. I jumped up because I was in shock. And I remember my appraiser was on the phone. By the time I got to the phone, I hung up the phone and I dialed 911. And I was fortunate that were 2 police officers up the street cashing their checks. So they got the call, came down right away, and took me to the hospital. You know, ambulance came, took me to the hospital. And my grandmother actually was retiring that week from the hospital. So as soon as I came in, I was fortunate enough to go to the hospital where she was at. They took me right in, took me to the emergency room. When I was a freshman, there was a senior at my high school that I ran track with. He graduated, went to college and med school. By the time I graduated, he was actually the doctor who operated on me. It was crazy. It was crazy. So,
right?
Yeah, small world. So I was fortunate. Everything went in and out. Didn't touch anything vital. Missed my spine, you know, by a little, by an inch or so. So I wasn't paralyzed, but it did take me 6 months to get on my feet. That was a lot of time for reflection. And I needed that because I was running, right? Nonstop, 7 days a week, just going. I was young, a lot of energy. And that slowed me down to reflect on me and to look at the environment and the people I was around. I literally cut everybody off and kind of started all over again. And I did better after that than before that.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. 5 times and for nothing to be hit, for you not to be in a wheelchair or dead, my friend, you are, again, you're a walking miracle. And good on you for, you know, looking at this as an opportunity to continue to better yourself and better your community, better your family. There's so many good things that come from unfortunate situations. And you could have easily said, you know what, what am I doing this for? You know, after almost losing your life. But instead, you use that as an opportunity to continue to go to higher places. But too, I commend you. I know I've heard this story of you being shot, but I don't know if I knew all the details. And I appreciate you sharing it because you are the first that I've had on the pod, my friend, that has taken not 1 but 5 bullets. So thank you for sharing.
You know, it was for me that was great because I had time for reflection. I had time to slow down, and I actually did more business. Prior to that, the year before, I started in 99. 2000, I think I may have sold maybe 10 houses. This happened March 30th of 2001. By the end of that year, I sold 34 houses. The next year was like 36 houses. The next year was like 40 houses. So it kept going on and on. And this was pre like CG or anything. You hear people saying, hey, I sold 100, 200.
Right.
Back then, if you sold 10 houses a year, you was the man. You know, so I was doing 30, 40, 50 every year. And the greatest thing for me was to ride back through that area where the people who I guess was the haters, in a cherry red drop top Porsche with beige interior with 17-inch BBS rims on it, black top, stick shift, riding with the lights on in the daytime.
Yeah. How old were you at this time?
Oh man, I was 25.
Oh man.
25, 26, yeah. 25, 26, yeah.
You were
that was the best feeling ever.
Yeah, you were the man for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I want to. There's so much to unpack there, but I really want to focus on one thing, and the main thing there, beyond the potential tragic situation that you've turned into an absolute positive, was how you started. So many people in this business, especially when I started in this business, were territorial, would keep everything and not share or thought it was, worried about competition versus collaboration. your career started because you added value and someone saw that value. Now, they made, you were doing all the hard work, but they were bringing you deals that ultimately they were making money off of, which, everyone in that particular case made money, including yourself. But you only got that opportunity because you had the buyers on the other side that you worked hard to build that network. You were giving value in those seminars that you were doing that ultimately got you that first shot to do deals, which ultimately led to that first $1 million line of credit that you were mentioning earlier. I didn't want to gloss over that because you were a connector. And because you were a connector, you were able to get this opportunity that really started your career on an upward trajectory.
Correct.
Simple as that. Correct. All right. So you're doing 30, 40 houses. You got the Porsche. This is pre-crash. Talk to me about how, 6 months after your shot, 9/11 happens, right? This is before the crash. You've got, 9/11, then you've got the crash. Tell me how, during that time, things changed for you.
Yeah, so 9/11 actually was when I purchased the Porsche. It was right, I think, the week when the towers got hit. And after that, it was really, nothing really stopped in the real estate market. I mean, deals were still going, construction was still going. A lot of stuff, the financial world was impacted. Things slowed down a bit, but not really so much, right? Because I was in my own micro world, right? So the lenders were still there funding deals. Things were still happening. It was more like the country was like in grievance. It was more so like more unity. Everybody had the flags on their car. Sure. Everybody being polite to each other. I don't know what happened to that, but we had like a nice 3 months of that, if you remember.
We forget, man. We forget. I was at the largest sporting event post 9/11. I lived in Michigan at the time, and at the Big House, the University of Michigan, the largest sporting event post 9/11. It was the most patriotic thing I'd ever been to in this country. Like, it was 100,000 strong, U.S. flag everywhere. People high-fiving each other. We're all Americans, and how soon we forget on things. I think we're, as a nation, more patriotic than we were pre 9/11, but still not at that same level, obviously.
Those two things that make me reflect all the time is COVID and 9/11. Just how the unity and everybody have a time to like slow down. Those two eras, but after that, leading up to the GFC, the global financial crisis, or great financial crisis, whichever way you call it, it started to, things were still picking up, things were still going, and I was just charging. Things started to slow down for me around about 2007. The deal volume dropped. The deals got easier, but because it was so competitive and everybody was doing it, it was harder to find deals that were super profitable. So you had to become creative. And I wasn't doing any rentals. I was just flipping away, purely transactional. I didn't want the little $200-$300 a month. I wanted the $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 hit. So doing a lot of that, and all the way to the market crash. And then it was an opposite effect, where
you could find the deals but couldn't sell them.
You could find the deals, you couldn't sell them, you couldn't get financing. In my market where I was at, values dropped 50%. So it became a stabilization period, fire selling, and my main goal was to pay off the investors. So when I back up a bit, I found a hard money lender. I would put in some of my own capital. It was actually my landlord at the time in the building I was renting in for my office was inquisitive, about what we did, right? Because he saw contractors coming, he saw this, he saw that. We kind of told him we was in the real estate business, but we didn't really get into any details. And he saw like all the time contractors coming and going. So he said he took lunch with me one day. He got success from the .com boom. He sold out before the crash, got a bunch of money, got this 15-unit office building, was getting money for like 7% or whatever it was on lines of credit. And he would create an arbitrage. After we had lunch, he decided to become a lender, a second lien holder. And I would use the hard money lender for a proportion of the loan. He would fill up the gap and give me money for construction. I would put in some money as well. I did some deals like that. Some deals I had all my money on construction. And then he started to bring his friends in. And that's when I kind of started to learn about raising capital from other investors. It was back then where that happened. And basically we did that all the way from, I would say, 2021 all the way to about maybe 2025, 26, 27, things slowed down. And then, we all knows what happened in 2008, the market crashed. When that happened, I had to make sure that the things that we wasn't finished construction, how do I get rid of these strategically when the investors won't take a hit? I took a major hit, didn't file bankruptcy, even though my CPA advised it. He said, hey, everyone else doing it. It's the lay of the land. File bankruptcy, investors will understand because of what happened, and you just start all over again. I was a big person about relationships because I knew some of the lenders that my landlord at the time referred me. These are people, savings accounts, retirement account. And I created real relationships with them. It wasn't transactional. So for me, that was what kept me up at night. How do I make them whole? And what we started to do was we say, hey guys, we're going to have to stop payments, right? Because of where we are, there's no income coming in from these. I'm not selling anything. So I'm going to have to reposition this and strategically get rid of them where I can make you whole. We did no principal write-offs. It took me about a year and a half to get everybody money paid back. I took a major hit, a couple $1 million, which ultimately led to, financial in the household, divorce, whole bunch of stuff. I had a bunch of other businesses that I had to sell. I mean, I had car wash, hair salon, a bunch of other stuff. Real estate had funded other businesses for me. So I had to unwind all of that stuff. Lost my identity in the process because I was real estate. And because there was no more real estate, I didn't know what the hell to do. A couple of the properties I kept as rentals and basically used that as income to kind of cover expenses. That was kind of what happened. It took me probably about 2.5 years before the dust settled. And I got back on my feet. I was able to sell the businesses that I owned, put money in my pocket to continue to survive. And then from there, I actually took an internship. There was an attorney that was doing a lot of short sales because that became the business at the time. I think that's how CG started, if I'm not wrong, was a bunch of people that short sell.
Absolutely right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. So during that time, I was playing in the short sale business because I knew the real estate business. And there was this attorney. Let me just mention one thing. One thing that I failed at, and I'll tell you why this community is so important, is because I was the lone soldier, right? I didn't have any board of advisors. I wasn't a part of any masterminds. It was just me, this young kid with money who knew everything and didn't want to listen to nobody, right? I wasn't a part of any groups. I wasn't going to any monthly meetings with the local stuff. I wasn't doing any of that, right? So mindset is different when you're young and you have the bag. You just think you know it all, right? So after that, I was humble, and I ran into a friend of mine who she was the assistant or a partner of the gentleman who put me on my feet in the real estate business. I told you he gave me houses, deeded over to me. He was older. She was working with him, and she said, "Hey, you need to come to this monthly meeting that this attorney is having because he's closing 6 deals a week." And I'm like, who's closing 6 deals a week in 2009, 2010? Like, I need to see what's happening. How is he doing it? So I went. Of course, he did his presentation, not about how he closed 6 deals a week, about enjoy his community. And he mentioned at the end, he have an internship. You can come to his office and work for him for 6 months for free. And he would teach you how to do short sales. And I was like, oh, me. I don't know anything about real estate. I'm green. I want to learn. So I went in. He didn't know my resume, nothing. I went in very humble. Not like I knew everything, pompous and arrogant, took notes, processed some short sales, and I actually spent 6 months there for free, right? Saw the connections, met the people who came to the office, the lenders, introduced myself, went to those meetings and started to be in that network, right, which is important, build those connections, and then that's how I was able to rebound. After 6 months, I kind of left and basically started doing my own thing. Back then, you had a few loan mod shops. So I got an office space. I would sublease out space to attorneys who did loan mods and stuff like that and kind of helped out with that. And I still did my short sales. And that's what kind of got me into the note business, because I was talking to a negotiator, and one day he just said, why don't you just buy the note? And I go, what do you mean buy the note? How do you do that? So he walked me through the process of the evolution of the foreclosure, right? It gets to a point where if it's not worth it for them to foreclose, or it takes too long to foreclose, right? Because we're in New Jersey. Remember, it's a judicial state. It takes forever. And back then you can keep delaying and filing stuff, and it could take, that was the strategy back then, how to delay the foreclosure, right? So they wanted to sell the note. And when I learned that strategy, I started doing some research, and I found a fund actually who purchased notes and sold notes, connected with them. And basically they had a training course also, believe it or not. Got some mentorship from them. And that's what led me to the next thing, which was a note business. And that was what I opened up my first real estate fund for, was to raise capital to buy notes.
So as I mentioned from the beginning, you're obviously super diversified. Some of this was because of evolution of the business, right? The black swan events that happened that forced your hand in some of these cases, but also you took ownership of going, all right, there's, this business is no longer, so I've got to figure out how to survive and what's next. And that 6-month unpaid internship obviously led to notes. What was the strategy out of the gates opening a fund to buy notes? What was the goal of how were you going to monetize those? Were you buying those notes to sell those notes, or were you buying those notes to ultimately get the property to be able to, monetize it after you take the property down?
So it was both. When I went through the mentorship course they had, because what they were doing, they were training people about the note business to sell the notes to them, right? To the trainees, right?
Yeah.
They would educate you, and then they build their downline by doing that. And what I did was I bought a few notes. I went over the hill and got the arrows in my back, as they say. And now I had case studies of deals that I've exited with great profits with my own money. Now I wanted to know, how can I do this on a larger scale? When I went back to the lenders, they remember I paid everybody off. They were like, okay, you the guy. Let us know. We're grateful. If you need us in the future, we're here for you, right? When I went back to them and said, hey, I'm doing notes now, we're going to take money, we're going to do this, they was like, oh, no, we don't know nothing about that. Like, we need to see the property. Like, we need to put a lien on the property, right? That's what they were used to. No one knew anything about the note business, Lee. And I would go around to the monthly real estate seminars that I told you I started going to, started talking about notes. I was literally, in my area, the only note guy. Like, nobody knew about notes. It was all short sell. Wholesaling was big back then. People were still doing fix and flip. People started doing more rentals. No, I was the only note guy. So I said, you know what? I'm going to actually copy what my mentor and them is doing. I'm going to educate people, so when I buy notes, I can start selling it to them. So I started doing note education. Like, if you look me up on YouTube and you go all the way back to probably 2012, you'll see presentations of me for notes, right? That's where my journey on YouTube started, with education on notes. So I was doing that, and it kind of led me to, and I still was doing short sales, and it kind of led me to, one day I was actually picking up my son from school, and I just got the phone with a negotiator, and I was pissed, right? I was so pissed because the guy was just straggling the along. It was hard to get in contact with him. My son had gotten in the car, and he heard me, not arguing with the guy, but he heard me not in a nice tone, telling the guy what it was. I got off the phone. He asked me, what's wrong? So I explained to him what happened. And he just said, why don't you become the bank? And I go, what are you talking about? You can't become the bank. Like, he said, I thought you said you could do anything you want to. Like, if you put your mind to it. I was reading all these great books back then, A Millionaire Next Door and all this stuff. And I was like, trying to pass that on to my kids. And we would listen to How to Win Friends and Influence People audio in the car on the way to school, back home, like Automobile University. And it was all this positive in it. So he challenged me and said, why can't you become the bank? You said you could do anything you put your mind to. I go, wow. So I started investigating, and it led me to, an SEC attorney. Of course, I'd asked my mentor in the note business, how do you guys raise capital? They told me. So I started doing some research, and I retained an SEC attorney. And basically, they gave me the do's and don'ts, how to structure it, how to put it together. And from there, I did more research and when set this thing up. Now it cost me about $25,000 to set up my first fund. It was a small fund for $2 million. And back then I thought that was a lot of money. And I thought as soon as I created this vehicle, money would start pouring in. So I'm going to invest $25,000. As soon as I have the paperwork, people see I have a PPM, they're going to throw money at me because now I have a legit way to raise capital. That didn't happen at all. It took us about 2 years of raising that money from friends and family. It was a fund for unaccredited investors where you can't market like online or anything. It has to be people I have a relationship with. So I start off with friends and family, and that's a whole separate business. I'm still, to this day, years later, 12 years later, still learning more about how to raise capital. It's purely a relationship business, right? It's you meet someone, they see you have a track record, they see your character, who you are. Essentially, they're investing into you. And then from there, if you do as you say you're going to do, they may refer some people to you, right? Or you get yourself into groups and places where you have high net worth people who you can develop those relationships with. And then the money comes in, right? So that's just one part of the business, right? I always share with everyone. My mentor told me you need 3 things to be successful in really any business, right? The capital, where to buy the product or the deals, and scalability. And I think the scalability part is where most people fail at because they get really good at raising capital and they can't find deals. Or they get really good at finding deals and they can't raise the capital. Or they get really good at both and they don't have operations set up where they can successfully manage that deal flow in a capital raise, and they fail. So you need to have a balance of all 3 in order to scale successfully.
Well said, Fuquan. There's a piece of this that I'd like to go deeper on. The other 2 legs of the stool, we'll leave that for a community like CG to help them on the operations side. The deal flow, they can get that from the marketing on the CG side as well. And there's some other pods. I want to take this time to really focus in and dial in on the fundraising side. You've done a great job of presenting in this community, both at our premier and our select levels, which we always appreciate. You recently did a presentation, and you're like, one of our go-tos on raising capital. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go a little bit deeper on that. You've already mentioned some of these things, but I'd like to kind of go rapid fire here with 5 additional questions specific to capital raise. Earlier, you talked about making sure that you make your investors whole. Obviously, if you don't do that, that's a big mistake. What are some of the other mistakes that you see when real estate investors are going down this road of raising capital that they make right out of the gates?
It's 5. Communication.
All right. Now we know
times 2.
You okay?
So it's funny how when people are raising money, they are they communicate a lot. They call the investor, they're texting them. It's like a first date or a honeymoon, right? They're really good. Then after they get the capital, that same communication stops. When it's problems, they don't communicate that. They only communicate the good and when they raise the money, right? And when I first started my capital raising journey, I too did a lot of that. I am guilty of that, right? I was just communicating, hey. Then I learned one day, I said, you know what? What if I make this as I'm establishing a relationship with this person, right? Let me just randomly text them on a Saturday. Hey, how are you? How is your summer going? Let me know if there's anything to do where I can help you. And when I started to do that across the board, oh man, people felt connection. Because I wasn't just sending them, hey, you have money with me now, so I'm going to send everybody the coffee mug with my logo. I'm going to send everybody. No, I'm going to treat you different because you're not the same as everyone else, right? If I'm going to send you a gift, I'm going to personalize it. Maybe it's something we spoke about. Maybe I saw some memorabilia or something in the background. We had a Zoom call of like your favorite football team or whatever it is, right? I did something that connected. I listened when I spoke to you and I heard you had 2 kids. One is 17 and one is in college and blah, blah, blah. So when I speak to you again, I can communicate with you on a conversation to show the connection because I'm paying attention not only to the capital part of how we're going to help each other get to the goals, right? Because it's a shared goal. You're helping me raise capital. I'm helping you make a return on money, but we have this relationship, right? I was actually just speaking to an investor on Sunday. An investor just called me out the blue, and I happened to be in the office. Hey, not doing anything, just thinking about you. How's everything going? I was like, I'm in the office. I knew you're the hardest working person. I was like, well, I'm only here for a few hours, want to catch up with some stuff and make sure I'm prepared for next week. But I'm glad you called me. I got some time for you. Let's talk. We start talking about the multifamilies in the Southeast, whatever. But that's the connection that I like, where people can be comfortable with calling me on a Sunday. They're not, oh, he's only a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, I can only call. Like if you're investing money to these big institutions or whatever, you got to call them on your office hours, Monday through Friday, whatever. And I kind of make it more personable, right? And that makes it harder to let that person down. Really hard, right? Because now you created this connection where it propels you to do more because you can't let that person down. You can't lose this person money. You really got to do your job because it's like almost like family, right? Like you know this person, you know their story, you know what they're giving you money for, to put their kids through college or to renovate their home, or they came in from this country, they're an immigrant and they started from the bottom and they built their business and they're counting on you, like all those things. So connection, communication, I would say, I kind of went off on a tangent, but communication, connection, transparency is important. You know, if you're having issues, tell it.
So the communication piece of it is everything you laid out there is spot on, making sure that you're communicating the same level that when you got the date as when you had moved on into later phases of the relationship, continuing that communication and building a relationship. Now, what if I am in a spot where I've done really well in real estate and I haven't had to raise capital, and now in order to scale my business as one of those 3 legs to the stool you mentioned earlier, now I've got to raise it, and I don't have this huge, massive network of wealthy people. I don't come from wealth. I don't know a bunch of wealthy people. How do I start that process to find consistent investors in my projects? Where do I start?
You know what I like about where we are now in this time versus where I started? When I first started, it was about building a footprint, right? It was flying to every event, paying for sponsorship, everywhere I can go, setting up my booth. NNG is here, NNG is there, creating a footprint. Now you have the digital world, which makes it a little bit easier. So if you do have a track record and you're actively doing a business, start to record some of this stuff. It don't have to be perfect. You don't have to say the right stuff and be at the right angle and be dressed with your hair slicked back. Just be you. Press record with your phone. Go out, hey, today I'm at one of my projects and this is what we're doing. The same thing that you do when you go check on a project. Just record that information, right? Educate is where I'm going. Educate the world, right? Build an education of what you do, how you do, why you do it, how you make money, document that. And then you can actually put that into the meta. You can do paid ads. You can do whatever to keep yourself out there and create omnipresence. Now, you still have to go to the seminars, but you want to really focus on the ones where you're going to find high net worth people, right? You have yacht clubs, Rotary clubs, country clubs. You have all these places where you can go to functions and events. Sometimes they do charity dinners. You're not going to raise money when you first go there, but what you are going to do is create that initial relationship so you can put them into your database and start that nurturing campaign and educate them on who you are, why you do what you do, what is your mission, how do you make money, how do you underwrite deals, and you kind of have that education going constantly. People get to know, like, and trust you, and it's going to take time, right? But eventually, you will become a household name, and people will invest with you, right? That's really the best way, I would say, in this day and time.
So good. I mean, education, but also understanding that you got to go where the money is, and then not expect to go right into those conversations, develop relationships, and ultimately people will be interested in what you do. People love real estate, and a lot of people that are looking at investment opportunities that have the money where if you're in those right places, they're investing in you more so they are in projects. So good. The follow-up to that would be, you mentioned early on when you were building the relationships with their investors early on before you went into notes, people really wanted that security of the note and mortgage. Is there anything that separates when you're documenting all these projects? Is there a specific angle that real estate investors feel really good about investing in beyond just you? about what they're investing in? Is there language that you use that is specific to the investment strategy?
Yeah, so this the backup, and then I'm gonna try to answer it the best way I could. Hey, Leon, I have a great deal that I underwrote, and I looked at this deal 3 times, and I'm making about a 40% return on this deal, and this is a really good deal. It's really I underwrote it in a way with longer holding time, and it's coming out with a solid 40%. When I'm a little bit short on cash, I have some of my money into the deal. I'm short, about $20,000. I want you to look at this deal to give me your opinion, because you may know somebody who's interested in a deal like this. Would you mind taking a look at this deal for me and kind of look on my shoulder and let me know if this 40% is real and if you might have somebody who may be interested in this? Right?
Right.
Leon's going to go, 40%? Yeah, I'll look at it. Maybe Leon would invest into this, or maybe Leon may know somebody to invest with this, right? So earlier on, when I would underwrite deals with certain returns and I knew there were investors out there who may have money, I would ask them to look at the deal that I had that's making X% of return, just to let me know if they thought it was a good deal from an investment standpoint, just to get their opinion. And more than likely, they would either invest in the deal or refer me somebody.
Sure.
Now, as far as documentation, depending on what type of deal you're doing, right? If there's if I get this right, the question you're asking me is how to protect investors that's investing in the deal. What type of documentation you ask?
Well, what makes them? Is there language that you have found over time? You have funds, and you also had deals that people were investing in. You mentioned first position and second position. Out of all those different strategies, is there a particular type of structure that you have seen, especially for those people that are starting to raise money? Is there a particular structure that people feel more warm and fuzzy about that
Correct.
they will bring forward?
Actually, yeah, the simplest way is note and mortgage first lien position. People eat that up all day long, right? Or some type of operating agreement where they would take majority of the shares if you don't perform. Right? Here's the deal: note and mortgage. You're in second position, which is the riskiest, Leon. So here's what I'm going to do. I know that I'm going to be able to sell this house. I'm going to put language in the operating agreement that if I don't perform, I know it's harder to close from second position. You just take over the LLC. You got a first mortgage in there. So you satisfy them and you keep the property. So giving the investor more security is important. Some people will ask for personal guarantees, which a lot of investors don't like to do. So me, I have no problem because I know I'm going to do whatever I can to make this deal happen. Pre-PG from signing, right? So those are the type of documents that I would do. Also, as far as language, how am I exiting a deal? So when I'm going to an investor, they want to hear the exit. They want to hear how do you underwrote the deal, and then when are they getting their money back? How much money you need, and when do I get my money back? The when do I get my money back is the most important part that you really want to emphasize, because that's what investors pretty much want to hear. How long is my money going to be locked up? When am I going to get it back? So hope that answers your question.
It did. And to follow up on that, some investors, from my own experience, they don't want to be locked into deals 2, 3, 4 years. Others, they don't necessarily need that money back, and they want to make the highest amount of return with the most amount of security. And so do not underestimate the power of having those conversations and knowing that, all right, this is a short-term investor. This is a long-term strategy investor. This is someone that's okay with no interest payments. You start finding that you have different tranches of investment types in your own business. And that gets you to the next question, which is now you've got, a network of investors that you've built, that you've proven over the years. The hardest part I've seen, Fuquan, and you've done a great job of doing this, and with funds especially, I know personally that funds are a full-time job. There has to be a way for investors to make that transition from just, mom and pop investment to a systematic approach. That doesn't mean hiring a full staff, but the easiest way to make that transition where it's scalable is what? Yeah.
So if you don't, I always say, it's funny. I heard someone else say this on the podcast the other day too. Matt Berg said this. He's from Veravest, but he talks about like raising capital. And I heard him say something. I was like, oh, I say that too. Running a fund is like having kids. Just imagine that. You raise your kids from now, all the growing pains, all the challenges, all the other stuff. That's how running a fund is. So if you ever said, I'm not having kids, then don't open up a fund. It's a challenge, right? It's a whole nother business. And I think from scaling from little mom and pops to opening up a fund, you're right. It is a full-time business, right? You have to be prepared. You have to be ready. You have to be able to communicate because things are not always going to go as planned. But if you're communicating to your investors and you are letting them know what went right, what went wrong, what could have been done different, where are you now, what are the goals for the quarter, whatever, and you're slowing them progress as you go along, they appreciate that. They appreciate communication. Depending on what type of asset you're buying, you can do a one-off raise capital for, like a syndication piece, which is great if it's one deal, like a commercial piece or just, 5 properties in one bulk or whatever. Or you can create a fund, but how you set it up is important. You could do deferred interest. And something that you said earlier, you have to find the investors. All investors are on a different journey, right? Some of them are younger, so they want more equity, so they can grow faster. They're in growth mode. Some of them are older, so they just want monthly payments, right, to take care of their monthly expenses. So finding where that avatar is going to be right for the deal that you're raising capital for. And you really have to be prepared because, again, like I said earlier, you are responsible for people's retirements, savings, and everything else, and they're counting on you, right? Things may not go as planned, but as long as you communicate it and let them know how you're steering the ship and how you're navigating the narrows, they would appreciate that. So you really want to think twice before going from the mom and pop level to a fund level because it's not easy, right? It's like a full-time parent, almost.
The ones that I've seen make that transition, Fuquan, at the highest levels obviously have full-time people that are dedicated to that particular fund as if it were its own business, to which we just stated it is. And so if you get to that point, obviously we're having different level conversations. I appreciate all of, those, those answers, because for most people listening to this, at some point, you're at one of these points, meaning that you're just starting your capital raise journey, you're in the middle, or you're making that transition to raising a fund. I will say this: Fuquan is a great resource to us in this community beyond the time that we have allotted here. So at the end of this, we'll make sure we get his contact information. So if you have questions on that, you can reach out, because I know he loves talking raising capital and projects as a whole. Before I get you out of here, I would be remiss if I didn't ask 2 things to end this out with. Number one, I want to know what you're most excited about right now, project-wise or just in general. And then number 2, the impact that you've been in this community for a very, very long time. So what is the impact of CG meant to you? Because we know what it's meant to the community, your impact in this community. But what has it meant to you? So first, what you're most excited about, and what does CG mean to you?
Well, I'm most excited about a deal I actually just closed. Was the biggest profit ever, somewhere to the ground, close to $800,000. It was a ground up project that I did, and I went from regular fix and flips to doing additions, and then after COVID, I just pivoted straight to doing all ground up construction, which most people don't do that. Because the cash conversion cycle, the CCC, is a longer period, but the profits are crazy, right? So sometimes it's worth it, but that's what I'm excited about now. Just closed on that on Friday, made a really great profit on a deal to help get other construction projects up and running. And now we have a systematic approach to doing it, and we're churning them out faster. So that's what I'm most excited about now, are the rest of the projects that we have lined up, that the profits are, similar to that. And now, we're kind of finally rocking and rolling to getting that done. And the other question about what value from CG, it's the collaboration that you mentioned earlier, that you can actually go to a room and you can learn things about how to improve your business, about how to become a better father, about how to make more connection, how to be a go-giver. There's so many different things that you guys bring to the table. And then all of the resources that are there is just, it's too much, to be honest. It's like you guys are smothering us with all this great content, all this good stuff. And I know it's intentional, right? Because you want to give more value to almost 3 times as much as their value as what it, costs to be a part of a group like this. But, it's an investment to me that's been worth it. I believe I'm coming up on 7 years in March or something like that. So for me, I was thinking about that the other day too. I was like, what's the average time someone stays in a mastermind? Is like 3 years. I don't know what you guys see. It's around about 3, maybe 4 years.
Yeah.
But, you think about and you go, every year, what am I getting from this? What am I adding to this? And we had this conversation a little bit. I was like, hey, I want to start giving more to the group because I'm at a point now where I feel like I've gotten so much and I feel guilty for not giving back. So it's a good feeling now to be able to share my journey on capital raise and other things with the members as well. But I just get so much from the group and, things that you can share with people. You could be transparent and really talk about your challenges. No one's going to judge you. People will help you, find a solution. So I'm grateful for that.
Fuquan, what you just said is, man, it is the lifeblood of this organization. The people that have been with us 7 to 10 years, they stay because we're trying to ever evolve the messaging. We're always trying to give you, the fire hose instead of the water fountain. The job for you is to filter that, right? Is to filter and we work you through that. But I always, I've come up with this poor analogy, but it's like a grocery store. You have everything available to you. You don't always need everything every time you go to the grocery store. You don't need 7 bottles of ketchup, right? But you might be out of mustard and you just need mustard right now, right? So it's those type of things that we give you everything on the buffet because members like yourself can bring value on ground up construction, how to go about getting, having a conversation in the morning at basketball to get a line of credit from another member in New Jersey, in Southern New Jersey, obviously, but from, another member. Those are the type of things that, those don't happen. And honestly, we can't not tell this story about the basketball player. Tell this story.
So this is great also. I call him the bull. I'm actually going to do an office visit next week. I'm at Santini's office. I called him up and say, hey, bro, you're the acquisition king. I need to come get the sauce. Like, you know what I mean? So I said, that's what I'm lacking out of my business is acquisitions. I need your help. He said, no problem. Come on down. I give you half a day, spend some time with you. So we were actually, my first time I met this gentleman, Santini, we were playing basketball. He was just killing it. So Leon had said, hey, he's from Jersey. You guys should connect. We wound up going to breakfast and, we started chopping it up. And I was like, hey, who are you using for lending sources? So he was telling me a few lenders he used. And he's like, hey, you should use Renovo. He made the connection through a text right away. As soon as I got back, I sent him a personal financial statement, W-2s, a whole bunch of stuff. Gave him my track record, and immediately they was like, you approved for $10 million. I'm like, what? It was like, yeah, you approved for $10 million. Let us know when you want to buy. So, I already raised capital through a fund, but let me tell you how this works. At that time, this was before Q4 2022, where interest rates were really low, and you were getting rates for 4%, 5% from hard money lenders back then, right? Everybody was a race to the bottom, right? Who can offer the lowest interest rate. So at that time, I was paying investors 10%. And if I can get money for 4%, I was using that. It only made sense for me to go out and buy the property, use that, use the money I'm raising for construction, and kind of have a blended interest to lower my cost of capital because that's what drives the bus. So basically, I started doing that and really build that up. And then I already had a relationship with other lenders like Lima. I was able to go, hey, these guys gave me this. What about this? And then they gave me the same thing. So, and then I started to not play the lenders against each other, but just letting them know, hey, I'm doing business with these guys. This is what they offer. I like them because of XYZ. And then I was able to get the same thing. Next thing you know, between 3 lenders, I had 10 million, 10 million, 10 million plus money I was raising from the fund. And I was like, wow, this is great. And that just helped me scale faster by doing that. So just a normal conversation at lunch turned into breakfast, turned into a $10 million line of credit literally 2 weeks later from that breakfast. And then months later, was able to leverage the lenders between each other and got up to $30 million. So, that's great, but you have to be able to deploy that capital.
Sure.
Right. And that's kind of what led me to doing a lot more ground up because it's capital intensive. So, it's been an amazing journey, man. And this is why I continue to stay in a group, because there's so many resources, even to this day, that I haven't tapped into. There's so many people that I haven't even met yet, because my goal is to meet at least 3 people when I go to the group, build a deep connection, and then see how we can help each other. So, that's amazing.
Love that approach, Fuquan, and I suggest that others, while in the group, try to focus on not the quantity, but the quality of relationships that just from one conversation started with $10 million line of credit, which you were able to leverage to 30. That's just one breakfast conversation following a friendly game of basketball. And that is, in a nutshell, if you contribute, if you look for relationships and try to bring value to the community, these type of things will land in your lab. All right, so there will be people after this that will definitely want to reach out to you. What's the best way for people to communicate with you?
They can hit me on my email, my first initial F, last name Bilal at nngcapitalfund.com. That's F Bilal at nngcapitalfund.com.
Is there a way for them to follow you on your social media?
Absolutely. I'm all over social media at Fuquan Bilal, Facebook, Instagram.
Sweet.
I'm on TikTok, but I'm not on TikTok. So just hit me up, private message me on Facebook or Instagram.
We're too old for TikTok, man. Fuquan, I can't thank you enough for taking the time today. I feel like we could have gone on for another hour here, my friend. So I appreciate you all these years that you've been in, and just to speak to the value of when you come in and give value to everyone else. Ultimately, what you end up finding is that every year there's someone new that can take you can have another relationship and take your business to the next level. So I really appreciate you sharing all of that, plus your journey here with CG.
Absolutely, I appreciate you.
Thank you, my friend. So if you would like to be in the room with members like Fuquan, which, at all 4 of our levels, Fuquan has actually been in the room for both, because he has come down to give back to our Select and Elevate, going through his journey and raising capital. That's who this community is. If you'd love to be in the room with them, you can go to our website, explorecg.com. At that website, you will find all the information that you need to make a decision. If this is something that you would like to apply for, there's an application there. Fill out that application. The next steps would be then to talk to myself or someone on our team, and we'll let you know if this is a good fit for us and a good fit for you. You will know that within the first few minutes of that call. Love to talk to you on the other side, explorecg.com. And obviously, we had a great podcast with Santini, who Fuquan had mentioned earlier. You can find all of our past podcasts on thecgpodcast.com. For now, this is the end of this episode. Fuquan, again, thank you so much. We will see you next week on the Collective Genius Podcast.
Are you ready to scale your real estate business? Visit thecollectivegenius.com, where real estate investors come to scale. Subscribe to the Collective Genius Podcast and hit the bell icon to be notified when our next episode releases. And thanks for listening.